and welcome to Nonprofit Enthusiast Live. I'm your host, Lasheena Williams, and I'm so glad to be here with you all to continue this month's conversation on blueprints for impact, crafting effective nonprofit programs. Today, I have very special guest, Kimberly Swartz, with us, and you may remember Kimberly from our past sessions. She's one of my American Express leadership cohort friends, and I'm so glad that she's able to join us once again today for Nonprofit Enthusiast Live. So let me bring Kimberly up. Hello, Kimberly.
Hi everyone, and thanks so much for having me again, Lasheena. I'm glad you haven't gotten bored of my all the
No.
info I've been sharing.
No, every time you come, I learn something new, and I'm sure our viewers do as well. So I appreciate you coming on.
Great.
So before we get started, if you don't mind, for our new viewers, sharing a little bit about yourself and how you started your journey in nonprofits.
Yeah, absolutely. So Kimberly Swartz, she, her pronouns. And I'm currently the Senior Director of Community Engagement for an organization called Taproot Foundation, which is this really interesting org that kind of exists in this space between nonprofits and companies and governmental groups and small businesses. And really at its heart exists to connect nonprofits, connect social good organizations with the support they need to thrive. And we do that by mobilizing volunteerism from the corporate spaces, really democratizing access to those resources. And the reason I found myself at a place like Taproot, and I've been here for over 7 years now, is because I was in AmeriCorps for over a year. I had a really great experience in AmeriCorps National Civilian Community Corps, working with a bunch of different nonprofits. I had great experiences throughout college, and my first few jobs were with nonprofits and with local governmental groups. And so I saw the capacity challenges they were facing. I saw their really huge need for volunteer resources, and also saw some ways I thought maybe volunteer resources could maybe be more intentionally utilized. And the culmination of all of those experiences really led me to wanting to work with nonprofits from more of like a policy level. How can we figure out how to so change the space here in the US so that nonprofits have just more equitable, immediate access to the funding, to the in-kind resources, whatever they need to thrive. And so that's how I found myself at Taproot. But I've spent my career up until this point working with, local libraries, the Boys and Girls Club. Lasheena and I were chatting about that right before we went live. And many other local nonprofits as well. So a bit of a mix between direct service experience and what I do now at Taproot, which is really like cross-sector work.
Awesome. So you know a lot about programs and the importance of programs and strong programs within nonprofit organizations. So that's this month's theme. That's what we've been talking about. What tips do you have for our viewers when it comes to building effective programs?
Yeah, I was really excited when I saw your February focus, and I knew that my session fell with you during this time because a lot of the work that I do in my current role is in the program design and just program management space. And so when I'm thinking about nonprofit program design, really my key tips kind of boil down to making sure that you're designing for the human at the other end of the experience or service that you're creating and then delivering. And so I highly recommend checking out IDEO's human-centered design courses and methodology. I know I've learned a lot from them, and definitely encourage you to check out Seth Godin's books and a lot of free resources online as well, who's one of the founders of IDEO. But in addition to those resources, just some quick tips. When you're thinking about the design of a service, a product, a program, human-centered design is really the process of decentering ourselves in order to meet our users or our community members' needs and expectations. And so I always recommend, beginning with empathy, always. When you have that user-centric focus, it means you're trying to put yourself in the shoes of the person at the other end of this thing that you're creating for. And so you need to do the work, you need to do the upfront research and data gathering to uncover what information does this person need from me? Do they need from us? When do they need this information? So really consider if they're in the right place to receive or digest the information in the first place. Why do they need the information or the service? What challenge are they actually trying to solve for themselves? And then how they might need that information or how they might need that service. So, through which format could they or would they best digest that information or best utilize that service that you're trying to provide to them? And so, just to restate that, because I know I went through a few different things there, it's basically about making sure you're providing the right thing
Mhm.
at the right time in the right way from the right person.
Mhm.
And in order to be able to do that, you have to study, you have to have a really clear sense of who the person, who the community is that you're trying to affect change with, that you're trying to design for. And so I can't underline just the need for research more, the need for data gathering more, because I think that's what you need to do in order to then build your sense of empathy, to then build these programs that really cater to these humans at the other end of the service.
Love it. So can you give us an example of this in action? What does this
Yeah.
look like?
Yeah, a good example just from my experience at Taproot Foundation. I've been here for 7 years, so I have had a few different roles across the organization. Some in the project management space, some of the in the marketing and communication space. And so when I moved into a role that was program design specific, one of the first things I wanted to do was just get our data sources in order, because I felt that it would be presumptuous for me to just dive into, I'm going to make this new event or I'm going to make this new program offering and then I'm going to pilot it. I'm just going to put it out in the world. It was presumptuous for me to do that without first taking a moment, taking like a purposeful pause, to use a really jargony phrase,
Mhm.
to actually like sit back and talk to community members and make sure that we brought them into the process. And so, one of the first things I did when moving into this new programming role was to launch a wide scale survey of our volunteer community members and folks who weren't even yet in our volunteer community, so hadn't signed up to officially join us, but maybe were following us on social media or maybe had joined the newsletter list, so weren't quite sold.
Mhm.
And in the survey, I asked current and prospective volunteers, like, what are the hurdles that exist for you? What's stopping you from getting
Mhm.
involved? Like, let's talk about that. What's motivating you, or what would motivate you to get involved?
Mhm.
And I really threw a lot of course, my capacity and energy against that. But I talked with partners in the field, got their advice. I got brought in other staff members and board members from around
Mhm.
my organization to really get their advice, to get their support in the survey effort.
Mhm.
And then the analysis of the data. And so, luckily, we were able to get several hundred responses, and we were able to use that data and use the focus groups that I then hosted after doing the survey itself to then inform the program design decisions that we've made over the past years for our volunteers. Yeah, so that survey happened about a year and a half ago, and
Mhm.
we've already done like 2 different event models. We've launched a new program model from it. So it really, my first email when something
Mhm.
new is about to launch always goes to those survey takers, because I want them
Mm.
to be able to see
Mhm.
like your ideas directly fueled this
Mhm.
new thing that we're coming out with.
Oh, that's awesome. Awesome. So okay, and I love that you shared it, programming in action, how you were able to use it in your day to day with Taproot. So after you did that data analysis, like you took that information, how far out did you plan your programming?
That's a really good question, because I am already planning on doing another big data gathering
Hmm.
initiative next year. So I'm giving
Okay.
myself like a 2.5 year period where I'm able to use the data, use the focus groups, pilot different initiatives, and then roll out wider scale programs
Hmm.
before then investing in the data gathering again. Because I don't want it to be too far of a
Hmm.
period where these volunteers then don't have a chance to give feedback for like another 5 years,
Right.
right? But I
Hmm.
also want to give myself and my team, we're not a huge nonprofit, and we
Hmm.
need to be realistic about it takes a fair bit of capacity to invest in research and stakeholder interviews. And so we made that great investment. Now let's give ourselves the time and space to really act on it.
Hmm.
So me personally, I would look at like the 2 to 3 year range
Hmm.
of like really going deep dive on data gathering, and also giving yourself like quicker bursts of feedback from
Hmm.
users in the meantime, right? Like, of course, we still always have running post program surveys,
Hmm.
post event surveys where we're gathering net promoter scores and other types of really great quantitative data.
Hmm.
I always make sure I have at least like one call with a community member on my calendar each week. I want to be talking
Okay.
with our nonprofit partners. I want to be talking with our volunteers at least once a week so that I'm staying close with community members and keeping my eye on, trending issues or needs that I'm hearing or seeing. So for deep dive efforts, space
Hmm.
it out a little bit more, but make sure you're still creating like smaller windows all the time.
What about for how did that information help you with your existing programs? Like,
Mhm.
yeah, how did you use that?
Yeah, for the existing programs, it really informs some of the messaging,
Okay.
actually. We used it for like the community outreach,
Mhm.
because the data in this case told us the existing models were still working and they were still attractive to people. Um, in a lot of instances, there was a lack of awareness about some of the services we offered. And there was like a lack of, and this is just from a volunteer engagement
Mhm.
perspective,
Mhm.
but there was this feeling of imposter syndrome of
Mhm.
like, those things sound great in theory, but I'm not sure if I'm the right fit. Like I
Mm.
don't feel
Mhm.
confident enough to express interest in this opportunity. And I
Mhm.
wonder if other nonprofits on this call like also have this type
Mhm.
of issue with community members that they're trying to get involved in one of their events or programs where it's like, you are the exact type of person we want to engage,
Yep.
right? How do I get you to see that you're the
Mhm.
exact type of person that we're created for?
Mhm.
And so in Taproot's case, what we were struck with was more of like a marketing and communications challenge for our
Mhm.
existing services and just figuring out the better way to message them so
Mhm.
that people knew you are like, I want you to see yourself in what
Mhm.
we're providing here because you are the right fit. And then in addition to the marketing and messaging, how can we build people up so that they feel ready to take on these types of
Mhm.
opportunities, or they feel ready, or like they have the structure and resources that they're going to need to feel supported if they join us in these efforts? And so we've invested and will be investing throughout this year as well a lot more staff time and in resource development and just creating more of like a structured onboarding and
Mhm.
more like staff moments and office hours where community members can just come and chat with us and
Mhm.
get to know us as humans too. So hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah.
Kind of a
Yeah.
mix of marketing, but also like education,
Mhm.
and more like face-to-face staff time.
So it sounds like taking this humor centered approach, collecting the data, hearing what your stakeholders have to say, not only did it impact your programming, but it also impacted other areas of Taproot because you talked about the
Yeah.
marketing. Is there any other teams that it kind of touched on? And then also, I would be interested in hearing how the like cross team collaboration
Mm,
when it comes to now sharing out, saying, "Hey, this is what we're hearing. How can we,
yeah. That's a
address
really
this?"
good question.
Mhm,
So definitely impacted other areas of the organization, and marketing department obviously was a close partner of mine in sharing out that we were doing this research initiative, and making sure that we were able to get all of the great quality responses that we needed. And I made sure to stay in close contact with them and do lots of share outs on findings,
mhm,
because we knew that any kind of program outreach efforts need to be in unison with our marketing efforts as
mhm,
well. Like any kind of messaging changes we want to play around with, or like motivational
mhm,
outreach, that's really where we can lean on marketing team members to lean into their skill sets and
mhm,
run with creative ideas there. But then also our development team members as well.
mhm,
This was really interesting information for them to dive into with me, because it helped them frame what some of our strategic fundraising priorities needed to be in the next few
mm,
years, right? Because if we know that we need to adapt our programs because of XYZ reasons,
mhm,
then we know we need to get additional investment behind, those things we want to change, or those things we want to build for our community. And now we have really hard data points to back
mhm.
up why this is important. And so the development team was very excited to have this kind
Yeah.
of like hard user information, but also like quotes and testimonials from the
Mhm,
people that we had focus groups with and one-on-one interviews with, to lend more of that like storytelling narrative to
mhm.
some of the proposals and pitches that they were coming up with from a fundraising perspective.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah,
I just love, once again, I'm just picturing starting with the human in the middle is what I'm picturing, and then being
right,
able to use that information to build your programs, remessage your existing programs, and then also collaborate with other teams. Because sometimes what would happen in an organization is everyone's doing their own, let's say,
right.
surveys and focus groups, but not necessarily sharing the information amongst each other to be able to help everyone in their, different department. So I absolutely love that.
Yeah. And, one piece that I haven't touched on yet is just this idea of, because we were talking about the marketing of it all. And I know in past marketing theme sessions that I've joined you for, I've touched on this idea of the user journey. So meeting
Mhm,
the user, meeting that human being, where they're at in their journey
mhm,
with your organization. Um, and typically, the industry standard is awareness, consideration, decision, use, and
mhm,
then re engagement and advocacy. And so, something that I'll add here, just from the gaining buy in, because you mentioned like all these people across the organization
mhm,
are kind of used to doing data gathering and data analysis on their own terms and in their
mhm,
own way. And that can be a place where silos really easily form,
mhm,
because no one is totally aware of what someone else is doing. This is a really good reason why it makes sense for organizations to plan for every couple of years to do something really big as an organization when it comes to focus groups and surveying and something deeper, because it gets everyone on the same page around what changes are we going to make collectively to
mhm,
ensure a smoother user journey. So, awareness stage, that's
mhm,
the marketing and communications
mhm,
responsibility, right? But the decisions they make impact consideration and decision, which
mhm,
that's where our programs teams are,
mhm,
right? Where we're trying to convince people to join us and then participate in the services we're offering.
mhm,
And then in the tail end, when it comes to re engagement and advocacy, that directly leads to more funding, right? And
Mm-hmm.
potentially more community partners and sponsors if we're able to get those stories of impact.
Mm-hmm.
And people are spreading the word that, oh, wow, I just had a really great experience with this nonprofit. Let me connect you to someone in my network who I think could be a supporter of your organization, right? And so any action that marketing takes impacts the program team, which
Mm-hmm.
impacts the development team.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, operations and tech staff and anyone else who's at your organization. I'm sure I'm leaving out a ton of different people here, but everybody is impacted because all of our community members are in their individual user journeys. And whether we realize it or not on a day-to-day basis, we do all impact our community members in their journey with the organization. And so it's really important that you as an organization can get behind the shaping of, all right, what is our user journey going to look like? What's the ideal version? Where do we think it is right now? And then how can we collectively improve it and move it to the ideal version? And research helps a lot with that.
Awesome. So I know someone is tuning in and they're like, oh yeah, we don't have all of those teams. It's probably just, a couple people, that's they are marketing programs and everything else.
Right.
What would you recommend for them? I guess what is a scaled down version, like just start here at least. What recommendation would you have for those organizations?
Yeah, absolutely. So one really discrete project that I would recommend is stakeholder interviews. So if you don't have the resources to do a wide scale survey effort, or you don't yet have like post engagement surveys set up comprehensively, and if you just don't have time to totally dig into the data analysis of it all, start out by conducting just a batch of interviews with some of your key stakeholders. And by stakeholders, I mean people that are really either responsible for the success of your organization or people who your organization exists for the success of. So in Tappert's case, we exist to serve our fellow nonprofits and social impact organizations. So if I was thinking about conducting stakeholder interviews, I would want to interview nonprofit leaders. I would want to interview small business leaders. I would want to interview individuals who are interested in donating their time to nonprofits or small businesses, so our volunteers. I also would want to interview some Taproot board members and staff members, the people who make Taproot's work possible, to see what, in your opinion, what do we need to do in order to more successfully achieve our mission? And I would ask all of these groups similar questions, so I have similar data points that I can compare across these different stakeholder groups. And then I would synthesize this qualitative data that I've received and kind of pull out some key trends that affect all people across the board. If I was working at, say, one of my past experiences was with a local food bank in Helena, Montana. And if I was going to conduct stakeholder interviews for a direct service organization like that, I would likely, of course, interview board and staff members, but I would also want to set up some interviews with some of our longtime volunteers that are there, like once or twice a week, unloading the trucks from the grocery stores or stocking the shelves in the morning before customers came in. That would be a really important group, who's responsible for the success of our operations. I would also want to set up some interviews with different types of customers that our food bank brings in, particularly some of the seniors who made up a large percentage of the population using our services, some of the parents of school children who made up the users of our summer food programs, right? And so your organization may have different key stakeholders than another organization that your friend works at. That's okay. Really think to yourself, talk internally about who is most important to us, who are we trying to serve, who's responsible for the success of our service of others, and that's who your key stakeholders are. Then just have some conversations with them and try and keep the questions as standardized as possible. And so that's where I would start first. You don't need to be a data pro. You just need to be able to talk to people and be able to take notes on those conversations. And I would be remiss not to mention that stakeholder interviews is definitely something you can find Taproot volunteer support for. It's one of the projects that I recommend really frequently for nonprofits who are new to using pro bono resources, because conducting research on my community members, it sounds great in theory. I don't know how I'm ever going to find time for it. You can actually reach out to organizations like Taproot and have our volunteers actually step in and conduct the research and pull out the key findings on your behalf.
Love it. And that was the perfect segue, because I was going to ask you to talk a little bit about Taproot, which you did. So can you tell everyone the website for Taproot, and we'll make sure we drop it in the chat box as well, where they can sign up for this pro bono help?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll start with the website, taprootplus.org. So TAPROOT.org. And we, as I mentioned before, we exist to help nonprofits get the support they need for free. So we are a volunteerism organization, and we partner up with lots of great companies and businesses who are looking for ways to engage their employees in giving back, and also helping grow their employees' skills, grow their project management, grow their sense of empathy, and experiential learning opportunities so they can use skills in new environments. So it's all good things for the volunteers, all good things for the companies. And then, of course, amazing things for the nonprofits, because you all get to utilize the strengths of people who are experts in marketing, technology, finance, HR, operations, writing, etc. So go to taprootplus.org. As I mentioned, our services are completely free to use. So create an account. Your colleagues and board members can create accounts too, and then just tell me and my team where you need support in. It could be some of this data gathering or data analysis that we've talked about on this call. It could be something totally different, like I need a new HR policy for this thing, or I need to recruit a new board member. Whatever the case may be, that's why my team and I are here. We're here to help get you that support. So we'll work with you and make sure that it's well scoped and it's ready to be matched with one of our volunteer community members.
Awesome. Thank you. And I'm going to share this really quick before we hop off. So yes, our organization worked with Taproot and Taproot volunteers to work on our corporate social responsibility. So one of our things, we help manage projects when teams come into town for different corporations. So the really cool thing about these volunteers, at that time, it was the American Express volunteers, is who we worked with. And they were able to give us the perspective, the direct perspective of a corporation, which was amazing. So we were able to revamp some things, revamp our messaging, also do more collections of testimonials afterwards to be able to attract other corporations. So I will definitely say, if you are not tapping into Taproot, that just worked out. Make sure that you check out Taproot. And I see a lot of you that post different questions like, hey, I need help with a marketing plan, or I need help with these type of things. Check out Taproot for a lot of the pro bono support that's offered. So make sure that you check that out.
Great. Thanks for the plug. I'm so glad that it was a good experience for you.
Yeah, it was really, really good. So Kimberly, thank you so much for joining. I hope you'll consider coming back on with us again in the future. And we appreciate you. And other than that, we will see you next time.
All right, thanks, everyone. Thanks, Lasheena.
Bye, everyone.